Hello folks, my name's Frederick Long and I'm an opera singer, and this season of Spring 2020 I was expecting to be singing Guglielmo in Così fan tutte by Mozart for English touring opera, as well as covering Aquila and Curio in Giulio Cesare. Now unfortunately our tour has had to have been cancelled due to the coronavirus pandemic, but despite this, and in a show of considerable generosity and compassion, ETO let us know very quickly that they'd be honouring our contracts and paying our fees in full, right through to what would have been the end of the tour. Now, needless to say, we're exceptionally grateful for this. And so this is one of a series of videos that my colleagues and I are going to be putting out just as a very small way of giving something back and saying thanks to ETO. And in fact, I'd like to dedicate it to my colleagues, both artists and administrators and technicians and everyone who put together 4 fantastic shows, not just the ones that I was involved with, but the St. John Passion and the fantastic new children's opera for those kids with special educational needs, The Extraordinary Adventures of You and Me. So may the time come, and soon, that we can share all these creations with you, but until then, this will have to suffice. So on with the video. So this is singing lesson number 4 in our series for adults. We do have a series for children if that's of interest too. But in this series we've had 2 from Stefan Lugas and 1 from the lovely Jenny Stafford. Now, first things first, I'm not a singing teacher, but I'm delighted to share with you a few tips and a few approaches which I found useful, that I've developed over the years of a bit of experience in the business and frankly making countless mistakes. So do proceed with me in that spirit. So at the end of her lesson, Jenny set us all some homework, which has been really fun to have a go at. But before I get on to that, I just thought I might talk a little bit about warming up. Singing is a very physical activity, and it makes sense to me that if we want to make the most of our voice, then we've really got to be aware of what our bodies are doing too. So if I've got a performance, before I even think about warming my voice up, I find it very helpful to do just a little bit of light exercise. Now this could just be a walk around the block, a brief jog or a swim. I'm not talking about running marathons. You don't want to exhaust yourself by any means. But if I've done that, perhaps in the morning, when I come then to sing a little later on, I find that I'm able to really draw from what feels like a much deeper well when it comes to breath. And that's absolutely key when it comes to good singing. And more generally, exercise makes you feel good, and it can get you in a really positive frame of mind for performance. So do try that. Now I've also got a little routine of 10 to 15 minutes of gentle stretches, rolling down through the spine, leg and arm swings, very gentle neck rolls, things like that, just to get me in touch with my body and to release any tensions that have built up, to help with my posture, and also to engage the right muscles that I'm going to be relying on to produce my best sound when it comes to singing. Sort of limbering up, really. Now, I won't demonstrate any of that now, don't worry, not just because I look very, very silly, but what works for you and what's safe and healthy will be very personal, and you know your bodies better than anyone. But I would say if you've done any yoga or Pilates, those can be very helpful and lots of crossover with the sort of thing I'm talking about here. And if you do have an instructor, perhaps you could ask them and they might help you put together a series of exercises that works for you, just to help with that, engaging the core muscles, help with core strength and flexibility and things like that, that you might find helpful. Whatever you do, make sure you give yourself lots of time to relax before you then do go on to sing and to warm up the voice. Now, just like when I was at school, I've been putting off my homework, so I think it's time we dive straight in. What Jenny was talking about was how to maintain a lovely legato, smooth line, which is what we're trying to do most of the time, to be honest. And one way she suggested we do that was by getting rid of all the consonants completely and just singing on the vowels of a phrase. And the piece she chose was the Sally Gardens. So we'll give that a go. Also, she suggested we try just putting our hands lightly either side of our jaw, as a way of being very aware of what our jaw's up to, because it might be doing things that we're not aware of. And as you can see, we can produce all the vowels without doing any chewing up and down at all. So if we can eliminate any jaw movement that's unnecessary, then that's a step in the right direction too. So we'll try that at the same time. This is the Sally Gardens, just on the vowels. So that's a lovely exercise. It feels great on the voice. You can really check that your breath flow is nice and consistent and smooth. You can check for your vowel placements, that they're in nice resonant spots. So it gets 2 thumbs up from me. Thanks very much, Jenny. So the question is, what comes next? And I think it's high time we tackle the thorny issue of consonants. Consonants have a really bad reputation. They are what get in the way of legato, or what make English such a difficult language to sing in, is what you hear so many people saying. Well, Constance and I have been on a very long journey together, and I'm pleased to report that we're now firm friends, and I actually think they can help in the pursuit of legato, and there's no reason why you can't feel the same way too. So why don't we together befriend some consonants? The first thing you can notice is that if you energize them, many of them are just as straightforward to sing on as vowels. So o, r, or r. There's v. W is a combination of vowels. Y, likewise, and z. And then there's the ones that you can't sing a note on, but you can sustain. I'm sure all these have very fancy names in linguistics, but I'm afraid I don't know them, and I just like to think of them as helpful or less helpful. So the helpful sounds, F, you can sustain on a fantastic supported sound. S, likewise. And that's not to mention the combinations of sounds that you get in English, like zh and f and sh, which are fantastic to sing through as well. So why don't we go back to the Sally Gardens and see if we can't put some of these consonants to good use. What I'll try and do, if I can, is mark through the phrase very slowly to try and demonstrate just how many of the consonants and the joins between the words and the different sounds you can sing through absolutely legato without needing to interrupt the sound. Down by the Sally Gardens, my love and I did meet. So as you can hear, there's only 4 or 5 really tiny moments where the consonants run any risk of getting in the way. And actually you can have a lovely seamless flow of sound, just like we did in the vowels only exercise. So if I were practicing this piece, this is exactly the kind of work I'd be doing. Really getting into the nitty-gritty of every sound and each consonant and each of these joins between the words, and finding where any troublesome spots are and trying to smooth them out. You'll have noticed that there are several combinations of vowels throughout just that one phrase, and they're known as diphthongs in English, and English is absolutely full of them. Without digressing too much, my advice with diphthongs is commit to the first vowel, be aware that there are more than one, and commit to the first one and make it a pure vowel, and don't fudge into the next one without making a conscious decision exactly when you want to move to the next vowel, and keep them all energized throughout. So perhaps it would be useful just to demonstrate the kind of work I might do if I were practicing this piece for real. So the 2 places that jump out at me are the gardens note, because that's on an upper note, and also a G definitely I would qualify as a less helpful consonant potentially, because if you're not careful it can sit rather far back, G. So we want to make sure that that's nice and frontal and doesn't get in the way. And also the my phrase, because that's the high note, and it's got a consonant and then a diphthong. So there's a little bit of fiddly business to iron out there. So with the first instance, I think Jenny's exercise can be absolutely perfect with this. We'd want to practice the vowels first, and just try and refine exactly where we're placing that R vowel. So it's nice and free and resonating. And then we just drop in the G and don't let it get in the way. Gardens. The other place is the my, as I said, and that, as we've talked about, M, helpful consonant potentially. we can buzz on it and sing through it in legato fashion. So that's what we want to be doing, and then behind that space of the vibrating consonant, we want to prepare the space for the vowel. So when we open out onto the vowel, it's absolutely there, ready, formed to express itself. Ma, ma, my. And there's the diphthong we were talking about. My. So making sure that R vowel on ma is a lovely pure R, and deciding exactly when we want to change to the E, which is the second half of the diphthong. My love, my love. We can buzz through all of those, and suddenly it doesn't seem so hard. So I'm aware that this approach may seem extremely fiddly and rather technical and dry, but let me explain why I think it's worthwhile. It leads to fantastic clarity of text, whilst allowing us to maintain our best sound and stay absolutely on the voice. If we have clarity of text, then it sounds like we really mean what we're saying and singing, and that the words really mean something to us. If it sounds like we mean what we're singing, then we are communicating. And communication is, for me, what singing is absolutely all about. Really, it's the only thing that matters. If we're communicating, then that's what's elevating our performance beyond just making a nice noise or singing a pretty song. If we sound like we mean what we're singing, then that's what the audience will remember. That's what leaves an impression on them. That's what gets them invested in our performance. And that's what moves people. So I realise there's a lot to take in there, but let me invite you to have a go at getting stuck in and exploring all those sounds and befriending all those lovely consonants. Now, I don't want to be accused of chickening out, so I'll give it a go myself, have a go at that phrase from the Sally Gardens and try and put into practice everything we've been talking about. But there's no way I'm doing it in one take like Stefan Loges did, so here's one I made earlier. Down by the Sally Gardens, my love and I did meet. Right, I used a phrase earlier which rang singers' jargon alarm bells as soon as I said it, which was on the voice, which, as far as I know, and as far as I can tell, means the same thing rather confusingly as on the body, and on the breath, and on the support. Yes, the famous singer's support. So before I go, I thought I might just try and dispel a few myths around all of this. What singers try to do is fairly mad. It's a pretty crazy thing to try and fill these vast spaces with our natural, unamplified voices. So as I sort of touched on earlier, it makes sense that you're going to want to use any other parts of your body at your disposal in this endeavour. And that includes the engagement of certain muscles which can help regulate the flow of air and can help us avoid tensing in other places, which could be very unhelpful and lead to us getting knackered and vocal fatigue and ultimately potentially doing damage to our voices. There's a very quick way, which you're probably familiar with, of finding out what those muscles are, and that's to put your hand, put your fingers a few inches below your tummy button and just go on a V, and you'll immediately feel, if you do that with a little bit of energy, the muscles engaging. And you can do the same exercise, and you can do it on a sh sound as well. If you put your hands on your lower back and around your sides, sh, 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 you'll feel them engaging there and round into the back too. And that's basically it. That's what we're talking about when we say support. It's the engagement of these muscles to help us use our breath and our bodies properly. Now, exactly how you do that is almost infinitely complex, and people try to explain it in 1,000 different ways, and that's ultimately part of the art of singing and becoming a singer, is learning exactly what your body's doing and how you can best use it. But at least, hopefully, that's just a starting point, and that when you hear someone using these phrases, you sort of know what they're talking about. The next lesson in the series will be given by the wonderful bass Ed Hawkins, and I mustn't forget to set him and you your homework for the week, which is to choose a phrase from your repertoire, perhaps one that you find slightly tricky, and just as we've been doing in this lesson, really get inside those consonants and those vowels and those joins and see if you can't build a lovely legato through it, and see if that doesn't help. And I'll be extremely interested to hear how you get on. So that's all from me today, and to hear more from ETO about how they are supporting their artists and keeping music coming into our lives through this pandemic, please visit englishtouringopera.org.uk. Till next time.